The development of things like autonomous robots, AI, and self-driving cars is accelerating rapidly. We might soon reach a point where autonomous or intelligent systems, AIS for short, are deeply rooted in every part of our lives. Say we developed a general purpose robot that could complete any task, how do we make sure when carrying out any task it does so with humans and our ethics in its best interest? It's clear that we have to come up with some guidelines. Ethically Aligned Design is a big detailed document made by the IEEE Global Initiative. It gives recommendations to anyone involved in developing AIS to make sure ethical considerations come first, and the technology contributes positively towards humanity. Why is this important? Because there are lots of discussion about how these new technologies will affect us. There are clear benefits like the replacement of dangerous human work, but there are also concerns: loss of privacy, discrimination, and economic impact. There are 5 general principles which guide the implementation of AIS. Ensurance that systems don't infringe on international human rights, the prioritization of well-being, ensurance that designers and operators are responsible and held accountable for their systems, transparency in the operation of a system, meaning that the functioning of a system and the reasons behind its decisions should be understood. Lastly, an awareness and minimization of the risk of a system being misused. Before we implant ethics in our robots, we have to actually consider how we know what is morally good and bad. We have to turn to philosophy. It's filled with complicated terminology, but it's essential to form an understanding of concepts which can help us express our thoughts. We'll break down various classic ethics traditions, starting with Aristotelian ethics. Aristotle is known as one of the founding fathers of virtue ethics in the West. Virtue ethics emphasizes moral character. Eudaimonia is the ultimate goal of human life, which is achieved through cultivation of virtues. The goal of a system should be for the flourishing of society, positively affecting human life, not just hitting one-dimensional goals like GDP growth. Kantian ethics are a form of deontology, which is focused on the nature of actions, whether they are inherently right or wrong. Categorical imperative is a universal guideline for determining the morality of actions. The gist of it is to act only according to principles that you could will becoming universal law. Machines can follow rules, it's all they do. A system could deduce the moral choice from some foundational rules. Shinto is probably the reason for the accepting culture of robots in Japan. The tradition holds the belief that everything contains its own spirit. Artificial intelligence is in fact rather natural and authentic in Shinto tradition. Shinto ethics emphasize the positive relationships that should exist between AIS and humans. The teachings of Confucius emphasize moral values. A Junzi is someone who embodies certain values, like benevolence, wisdom, and respect for ancestors. These traits are part of following the Tao. You should notice similarities with Aristotelian ethics. In Buddhism, the way someone should live is based on the goal of liberation from suffering, nirvana. Buddhist ethics are concerned with if actions do or do not lead to this goal. This conflicts most Western frameworks. The idea of cessation of suffering for all beings is insightful and could be a basis for AIS, rather than the absolute rules and axioms. You've probably heard Descartes' famous principle, I think therefore I am. This African philosophy sees things differently. I am because we are. Ubuntu views your identity as shaped by the community you're a part of. The essence of being is tied to a sense of belonging. The question becomes, will AIS have a negative impact on the community, removing jobs and alienating individuals, or will it support the vulnerable and help us connect further? There's currently a monopoly by Western values in responsible innovation, an idea which attempts to set out the responsibilities of engineers in ethical decision making. If AIS are to become universally applied, it's integral that ethical frameworks apply in the global community. A standardization of ethics in AIS design runs the risk of marginalizing certain local values. It's a difficult challenge, so we need to engage in cross-cultural dialogue to reformulate our current foundation. So once we have our values, how do we include them in our systems? It's actually pretty difficult to quantify a value as a concept. It's more feasible to try and embed norms, instructions to act in a given way, in a given context. There's 3 parts to this. When thinking about norms, we have laws which are easy to identify, but we also have the behavior and language to think about. These can vary hugely depending on the situation, from caring for an old person to roads for self-driving cars. Norms also change over time, and so a system has to be adaptable. Most of the implementation approaches can be categorized as top-down or bottom-up approaches. Either a system identifies actions as ethical from a symbolic representation of its activity, or it builds up through experience of what is ethical or unethical in certain situations. A hybrid implementation addresses the limitations of these approaches by balancing the inability to learn and the limitless learning capabilities of the second approach. When evaluating the system, we have to make sure we use the perspective of designers, users, and regulators. It's a given that we don't expect AIS to behave the exact same way as humans, so we should judge it by what's expected of it. We also have to identify any biases that AIS may have, which could disadvantage a group in the community. We've already had cases of speech recognition systems being less accurate for female and non-white users. We should make sure there's diverse membership in the evaluation process to identify and remedy such issues. I'd recommend you take a look at the EAD document, which goes into more detail about some of the mentioned issues.